In case you missed the news, Overwatch League MVP and poster child J1, better known as Sinatraa, has left the San Francisco Shock and the Overwatch League as a whole in favor of the new FPS game on the block, VALORANT. Now some of you may not care about the Overwatch League and some of you may not care about VALORANT, but this is big news. This is a huge blow for Overwatch in general, and when we unpack this decision for a minute, it becomes clear that this actually has incredibly worrying consequences for the state of Overwatch and where it's going. Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to discuss why one of the biggest names in Overwatch history is leaving and what that means for the game going forwards. I'm going to break down each of the reasons Sinatraa gives for leaving and also expand on some of the reasons he doesn't give but surely play a part in his decision. We're going to try and figure out how Overwatch can learn from this and maybe, just maybe, see it as a wake-up call and save the game before it's too late. Now the first thing to address is this. Why is this such big news? Some may say that players will always come and go, and lots of big names have left Overwatch and it's still doing fine. That is definitely true, but no one of this magnitude has left Overwatch till now. At least, not when it comes to pro players. Other than maybe Jonak, I don't think a more significant player could have quit Overwatch if we're talking pure impact. This is the league's current MVP and best player in the world. This is the guy who's been synonymous with Overwatch since he was about 16. He was the USA's great Overwatch hope and the guy who eventually led them to their first and only World Cup win. And if that's not enough for you, even the Blizzard devs saw Sinatraa as the peak of Overwatch play. When Jeff Kaplan debuted Echo on Tim the Tatman's stream, he specifically name-dropped Sinatraa as the one player he looked forward to seeing playing Echo. Then, he later duoed with Sinatraa on stream as he played Echo for the first time. So just think about that for a second. Overwatch's lead developer marked out one specific player as the person to play this new flagship hero. Then 2 weeks into that hero's life, before she saw a single minute of pro play, that same guy leaves your game for a different one. No matter what anyone says, this is going to be a big blow to the Blizzard team. They really have to respond to this in some way, and we'll talk about what those responses could be in a minute. But first, let's address why Sinatraa left. I've seen some people suggest that Sinatraa hasn't played for a few weeks in the Overwatch League and therefore this news is somehow less significant, but this is something he actually addresses in a tweet longer he posted yesterday. Sinatraa says that he simply lost passion for the game, and this is not something that happened overnight, but something he spent a month thinking about and reflecting on. Eventually, it showed in his scrims and he just couldn't put out that level of performance he once did. This all makes sense obviously. If you don't love the game anymore, there's no way you're going to feel motivated to grind and keep improving the way you have to when you're a pro player. But it's definitely worrying to see someone who's been linked with Overwatch for so long say that they've suddenly lost passion for the game. Addressing why he lost the love, Sinatraa cites two specific reasons: role lock and hero bans. He doesn't explicitly expand on what he means by that, but I think we can read between the lines. Let's first talk about hero bans. Pretty much since speculation began that some form of hero bans would be a thing in Overwatch, they've been a topic of huge debate. Some people are all for them, and some people are absolutely against. Personally, I'm in the former camp and I've gone over at length in previous videos why. However, I think nobody expected what eventually came into Overwatch: hero pools. At first, people seemed receptive to the idea and they seemed like a potential compromise between having a specific banning phase and having unrestricted picks in Overwatch. But now that they've been around for a couple months, I think it's fair to say that its outcome has overall been a negative for the game. There's several problems with hero pools, starting with the non-pro level, i.e. all of us who play the game. The first is that it takes control away from the players in the games they play. When Jeff first announced the idea and spoke about why he didn't implement a specific ban system, he spoke about how he didn't want other players to have control over the heroes he picks. He thought that would feel shitty as a player playing Overwatch. Well, unfortunately, hero pools feels even shittier, because now, rather than 12 players in the lobby deciding who or what gets played, it was first the team at Blizzard, and now statistics plus some randomization that decide who or what you can and can't play. And that feels incredibly frustrating. As a player, you have absolutely no say in your own games, and if your hero is banned, they're not just banned for one game, they're banned for an entire week. The net result is that people just stop playing for that entire time period, whether it's your regular players who have their main and stick to it, or whether it's popular one-trick streamers. When the week's ban comes along, some players just stop playing the game altogether, and invariably, that means they go and play different games. That is really bad for the health of Overwatch. And it's no surprise that eventually, people just give up on the game altogether in favor of those other games they've been playing. What's worse about hero pools is that it doesn't even help the community in any meaningful way. If the idea, or at least one idea behind hero pools, is that it would help the community learn about picks and counter picks, then that idea has sadly failed. A week is not long enough to suddenly learn a new meta. Most people only play a handful of games every week, so by the time one pool is done, you've barely had time to process what's been played, let alone learn something meaningful from it. Take for example, the Pharah week, which was the week that Blizzard specifically banned D.Va in every hit scan except Ashe just to make Pharah viable. What happened? Well, I was doing my unranked GM Ryan challenge that week in Plat, and I saw almost 0 Pharahs in at least a dozen if not 2 dozen games. Why? Because obviously, there just aren't that many Pharah players in the game. The place where Pharah is at right now means that she's quite easily shut down by competent hit scan players, and around Diamond, people can just shoot you down with relative consistency. So if you really want to climb, it makes much more sense to commit your time to learning a different hero. Banning every Pharah counter for a week is not suddenly going to create a wave of Pharah mains when that player base just doesn't exist. This is where hero pools just fall short. It's the same way that more tanks haven't just suddenly popped up to fix Blizzard's queue times. That change has to be more systematic, and only then over time will the player demographics change. And from a learning point of view, what did we really learn that week? Hit scans count on Pharah? Gee, thanks Blizzard, that hero pool rotation sure taught me a lot. A week just isn't enough time. But the problem with hero pools is that you can't do it any longer than that either. Like I said, if people want to play mostly one hero, and you ban that hero for an entire period of time, then they're actively disincentivized from playing Overwatch full stop. If you make it 2 weeks or a month, then that's even longer that people just aren't potentially playing your game. And the longer someone goes without logging on, the more likely it is that they'll never come back. Even if you're not a strict one trick, but you want to go into ladder and think, I mostly want to play Ana, but I'll flex to Lucio if my team needs. But then Ana is banned for a month, you're just going to check yourself and say, actually I'd just rather leave it out altogether. At the pro level, there's a slightly different set of problems. First, there was the practice problem, where pros couldn't practice in ladder because the bans were different from those in Overwatch League, so they had no way of simulating the circumstances they were going to experience in their matches. Now that they've synced the bans across Overwatch League and Ranked, there's still another and even greater problem, what the bans actually are. This is where you really start to question, and to be honest, rubbish the idea that Overwatch is a competitive esport because the way the bans have been handled are shambolic. First, there was the random ticket system, where casters were literally pulling a lottery to see which heroes would be banned. This achieved its final form when it culminated in the ultimate farce of Zoe's cat Nori deciding which heroes would be banned and incidentally doing the best job of it.
There we go.
May! Nori works the system!
If this is what sent Sinatraa over the edge, I wouldn't blame him, because if I was a pro player, this would definitely make me quit. Imagine dedicating your life to a game and making it your livelihood, and then letting season-defining decisions be made by a cat. A fucking cat, guys. Can you imagine a professional sport just putting a dog onto the pitch and letting it run around and decide that if it touches a certain player, that player just can't play for a week? It's just absolutely ludicrous. And rather than making the game about strategy, Overwatch League decided to make it a random chance event, and that speaks volume about how they see the game. It's a meme, not a competition. It's entertainment and not an esport. The idea of competitive integrity or taking the game seriously seems to be a laughable one when it comes to Overwatch. And I haven't even spoken about the disaster that is the tier 2 scene and how every academy team seems to be dead. Now the current bans are based on pick rates in GM plus ladder, and this again is already proving to be a really bad decision. Take a look at the current bans. McCree, Widowmaker, Wrecking Ball and Mercy. McCree and Widowmaker have been banned the last 2 out of 3 weeks, and it's likely that due to their high pick rate, they will continue to be banned every other week, even though pros, or spectators for that matter, have no problem with these heroes. Meanwhile, heroes with almost negligible level picks in Overwatch League but are ladder friendly like Ball and Mercy are banned, making no difference to the pros but completely ruining the ladder experience for some players. So in the end, no one is happy. Pick rates really should not matter, particularly not ladder pick rates. A hero being picked is not inherently a problem. Nobody minds if Reinhardt gets picked a lot, if Tracer gets picked a lot, or if Ana gets picked a lot, because these heroes make playing and watching Overwatch fun. Banning them just because they're being played is forcing diversity for diversity's sake. Compare this to a manual ban system. If a hero is getting banned a lot by your players, now you have a meaningful statistic. Again, if people like picking and playing a hero, that means that hero is good and fun for the game. But if a hero is getting banned all the time, that means that hero is either too strong on their own, too strong in the meta, or just not fun to play against. Every single one of those is a problem that the devs can look at and address, so that the hero is either more balanced or more fun. But pick rate, what does high pick rate on its own tell us? Oh, good job guys, you made a hero like Mercy which is very accessible to those even without an FPS background, and thus lots of people want to play her, but now let's stop them from playing her even though she's not that strong. It really doesn't make a lot of sense, and I can see why Sinatraa and other pros would find this rage-inducing. But let me defend Blizzard for a minute here, because I know exactly why they've done what they've done. And honestly, it couldn't be a more classic Blizzard. Basically, they're fixing problems that have already come and gone, because as always, they were just too slow to act. The truth is, the hero pool discussion came about during the dreaded Orisa Sigma double shield meta, which saw people leave Overwatch like they were running from the coronavirus incarnate. Now in true Blizzard fashion, rather than changing things at the time or balancing the game quicker, they went AWOL on their "we're saving everything for Overwatch 2" mentality, and the community got so incredibly frustrated that they just raged in the void that is forums and Reddit and social media. This is when people started suggesting bans and other changes to the system of Overwatch, including myself, who started to test the idea amongst my Discord community. Months later, after nerfing shields and already removing Orisa Sigma from the meta, Blizzard then decided to implement hero pools in a response to something that didn't exist anymore. The biggest complaints that people had with the state of Overwatch for the last few years was that it was stale, and certain metas were too boring. Namely Ghosts, which was fun for a while but lasted way too long, and the double shield, which was never fun, and didn't last that physically long but just felt like it took us to hell for a decade. Hero pools fixes this, except the problem was already fixed. 222 lock came in and killed Goats, and balance patches killed Orisa Sigma. So hero pool has come around now to force random changes to the meta when actually the meta already allows for decently diverse comps and the game is pretty well balanced. This is not to say that there are no issues with Overwatch League, particularly from a viewing perspective, but the issues that hero pools was designed to sort out aren't around anymore. Which is why if you look at it and think, why is this even in the game, you might find yourself struggling for an answer. And which is why it just seems to have the effect of randomizing the game more than anything else, which is a pro's worst nightmare. This is where we now come back and touch on the implementation of 222 and Sinatra's statement that this contributed to him loving the game less. This is probably a more personal preference on his part. 222 is a big benefit for ranked and particularly quick play as it gives Overwatch some semblance of order, but also it's ultimately not the best version of the game. Overwatch is and always has been more fun when you can pick more freely and have more wonky, wacky comps, which is why I myself was against 222 to begin with. But will we ever go back to the free pick system? I don't know. I'd like to see us get there, but first, other fundamental issues have to be addressed in the game, like the complete shortage of tank players. For Sinatraa, he may be someone who enjoyed Goats a lot, or more likely, he enjoyed being able to flex from DPS to tank since he was someone as famous for Zarya as his Doomfist. But with 222, he obviously can't do that anymore. Is this something they can look at come Overwatch 2? We don't know. But this is where we need to talk solutions. Sinatraa is gone, but there's still hundreds of great pros and a thriving Overwatch community that can be stopped from leaving should Blizzard act now rather than too late as they always seem to do. What we need is what the community has been asking for a long time: communication and content. Firstly, the content hoarding needs to stop. Yes, they won't have a big explosion of new things in Overwatch 2, but every month of sparse or no content sees another batch of people leaving the game. Echo was a great introduction to Overwatch and created a lot of hype, but if the rumors are true, then she's the last new thing we'll see in Overwatch 1. Now that's unacceptable, particularly when we consider the second point, communication, or more accurately, the lack of it. We still have no idea when Overwatch 2 is coming out. It's one thing to tolerate a dearth of new content if we know we only have to wait 2 or 3 months, but waiting indefinitely for something we don't know when it's coming is just asking us to have blind faith, which the community definitely doesn't have anymore after the many missteps Blizzard has taken. If the devs want to keep their community alive, and more importantly keep the community happy, then we need some idea of what direction the game is heading. Where is the boat that we're all traveling on going? Is it a beautiful tropical island or the edge of a waterfall? Some announcements about what we can expect in Overwatch 2, when it will drop, what changes will come. These are what the community need right now, particularly when VALORANT is having so much hype and turning so many heads in the pro scene. If we keep staying in limbo and burying our heads in the sand, and with the game having these frustrations for both pro and amateur players, I really do fear. I fear that the game might fade away from what could have been one of the greatest games ever to just another failed story of what could have been. And that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you found this video helpful, and I hope it gave you some food for thought. What do you guys think? Is this the crossroads moment for Overwatch? Does it signal the beginning of the end? Or will Overwatch actually bounce back from this stronger than ever? Why do you think someone at the peak of their game would leave for a game that's still in beta? And what does it mean for the future of Overwatch League and just ranked in general? Is Sinatraa right? Are hero pools in 222 a problem for the game? Or is it a case of good riddance? Tell me what you think, drop all your comments down below. As always, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons and my Twitch subs who do the awesome job of supporting me. Speaking of which, I'll be doing some Patreon and Twitch sub only pugs next Wednesday. So if you're interested in playing some Overwatch with me, then make sure you're signed up to one or the other. But that's it from me. I'll be back before you know it with another video. See you guys soon.